Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and co-parents of all ages, this podcast is for you. Introducing in the center ring, the Amicable Divorce Expert, Judith Weigle.
Joining me in center ring once again is Brian Stefan. You heard from Brian last week when we aired his episode as a therapist and a social worker on suicide, suicide prevention, and grief. And it was a huge episode. That's in Brian's current life. In Brian's former life, we have another topic that is so poignant, so earth-shattering to those who are in it that I cannot believe I found somebody who can address the topic of romance fraud and financial exploitation. And the reason why Brian, hey Brian, welcome to the show again.
Thank you.
The reason why Brian is going to be talking about this is because of his former life in the world of intelligence and in working with his brother as a private detective. Love all of this stuff. I hope all of you do too. But Brian actually brought up to me when we initially met and we were going over his background. I said, wait a minute. Yes, suicide and grief is completely important and we need to talk about it. Let's do it sooner rather than later. But this topic, Brian, about romance fraud and financial exploitation, not only has this landed in my office in terms of filing for divorce over the years, but all of a sudden 2 cases in 2 weeks came to me. Slightly different circumstances, but not really. So first of all, Brian, what did you do in the world of intelligence?
Well, thank you for that kind introduction. I'm so glad that you take this seriously and also understand that this is something that affects so many people, so many of us, and those of us who perhaps it hasn't happened to yet, because this is something that impacts so many people. So I'm really glad that you're using your platform and your voice and your support to get this important topic out there in the world. So first of all, thank you. I'm so glad you are who you are and care. So my background, I wasn't always a social worker and I wasn't always a therapist and I wasn't always doing grief and bereavement support and suicide prevention. Before that, I was an intelligence officer, a civilian in the Department of Defense. And then after spending time in the DoD, I was a intel analyst here in Los Angeles at a place called the Joint Regional Intelligence Center, which was after just very briefly, after 9/11, it was determined that there was a lack of information sharing between law enforcement agencies and intelligence organizations and hospitals and all different, a lack of coordination. So what they did is they created these offices throughout the country where people could get together and collaborate and share information to protect cities, protect folks. When it's a great organization and a great mission. So I was an intelligence analyst in that function. And it's not just terrorism that we were trying to protect against. It was all crimes. It could be maritime crimes. It could be gang activity. And certainly those cases of fraud. And fraud plays out in so many different ways. Certainly there's the knockoff jeans and the DVDs that we can buy online or on a sidewalk somewhere. And there's the knockoff pharmaceuticals. This topic here, and yes, as you said before, I work for my brother, an organization called CTEC Investigations. It's been around since the late 90s. And in this world of private investigations also, where people have been hurt, people have had things taken from them, people have been betrayed, and oftentimes law enforcement can help, but sometimes we turn towards private investigators who can help us navigate. And I know you know very well that how beneficial it can be to have a PI or an organization that can help us navigate the waters when something is taken from us. Now, this topic here, just to bring it up to romance fraud and financial exploitation, which has happened for a long time. It's happening more and more these days. I'm sure we'll talk more about what it is what is this. And these days, the last few years particularly, as we are more separated, as we're more distance, yes, in part due to COVID, but also due to that so many of us are, and I'm holding up my cell phone right now for the camera, but so many of us are relying on our online lives and our telecommunications so that we have this perfect storm of where love and where money can intersect. And some of the people who are listening, maybe many of the people who are listening to this, either have personally been impacted by this, know someone, maybe a family member or a friend. Personally, I know people who have been manipulated, who have been lied to, who have been strung along, who have been catfished, who have been ghosted, who have been confused, who have been betrayed emotionally and financially. And I also can tell you that as a suicide prevention professional and as a therapist, I know firsthand the end of this story sometimes, which can include people feeling so broken, so betrayed, so alone, that suicide does become a thought, an option. And again, as we talked about last week, suicide often happens when the suffering and silence occurs, and the deep suffering and silence and the disconnection. And I can't think of a topic where there's more disconnection, more loneliness, more hopelessness than when we have our hearts broken and we have our pocketbook, our finances broken too. And so there's nothing, this is happening everywhere, and it's not getting enough attention. That's why I'm so glad to be talking with you about it today.
And it's not getting a name.
Right.
The other emotion I want to throw into this, Brian, is embarrassment. So when we are embarrassed at something that we've done, even if it was unintentional, unknowing, oh my God, how could this have happened to me? The embarrassment itself, especially if we're professionals, we hold ourselves, to a certain standard. Everything we do, we try and be ethical. And then all of a sudden, we are taken advantage of, and certainly taken advantage of romantically and financially. And that embarrassment is the wall we can't get through to ask for help, right?
Yeah, shame is that's really well said. Shame is the wall. It really does feel like the wall that is keeping us imprisoned. And of course, I wish I could tell my sister that I lost $35,000 to a man I never met. Of course, I want to tell my therapist that I lost $475,000 and I'm in my 80s. Of course, I want to tell someone that I kept buying these Target gift cards or these Starbucks cards for this man who said that he was in the military or on an oil rig, or a man who was a doctor in Geneva and said he needed money for a flight. Of course, I want to tell people, but again, the shame is so, again, we're talking about two of what I consider to be the most taboo topics. For me, the three big taboo topics in life, maybe I'm talking about myself here a little bit, Judith, but the three big taboos: sex, money, and death and dying. I think these are the three big areas that for so many of us, these are no-go zones for being able to, over the dinner table. This is hard stuff. And when you combine sex and love and money and finances, again, it's not surprising to me that given the betrayal of those first two taboos, many people start thinking about that third.
Yeah.
Like, really, I just don't know if this is a world that I want to live in anymore. And I've lost someone who was a victim of romance fraud and financial exploitation. And she was in her late 20s, early 30s when she was targeted and manipulated and then discarded. And she was never the same. And she died by suicide. And so while that was a friend and not a therapy client, I still carry that story with me. And I'm glad that anybody who has been through this, maybe people who are listening to us talk and have a family member who's embroiled in this, this is hard stuff. And I'm glad that we're putting a name to this and we are giving voice so that the walls of shame can finally start to come down. Because until that happens, like you said, we are stuck. We are imprisoned.
And let me put a statistic next to this, Brian. $304 million a year is lost in romance schemes in the U.S., just the U.S., $304 million a year. So that's a pretty huge number. Let me tell you how it comes into my office, and that can be a starting point. This isn't the only way, but the way I've seen it come into my office for divorce filing is immigration divorces. Huge. That's recently. So recently I've seen immigration divorces where a variety of situations. Years ago, it was older men. Now I have to be careful when I say older men because I am in my 60s. Of course, I don't look like it. Lots of money spent on the cosmetologists and the doctors. But, men who were married to one woman for 40, 50 years, wife dies, they are so used to being in a relationship with somebody and like that now they're going on these dating sites. Now, what man in their 70s should be on a dating site? I really don't know, because you have to be aware of what's going on in these dating sites. And so several men throughout the early years of my practice went on these dating sites and they chose specific nationalities of women that they just seemed to like. So it has nothing to do with nationality. It can be any nationality. So they go on these dating sites that cater to specific nationalities and they form an internet relationship. Now somebody has to go visit somebody. So they spent the money to physically, in person, connect and quickly get married, because that's all they know is to be married. And all of a sudden, they're being asked to pay for the wife's family expenses because their family doesn't have a lot of money.
Yep.
And then these are the things that I need now that I've moved to the United States. I need certain things to look like I fit into the culture. So that was several years ago. And just recently, I started seeing it again. I saw it in a gay male relationship right before I met you. I was literally the week before I met you, a gentleman called me and said, I really don't know what to do. I was on Tinder. I met a gentleman from South America. Within a month, we met in another country and got married in that country and then moved him to the United States. This was a very wealthy man, the United States citizen, very wealthy man. And within a couple months, realized, oh, I'm being asked to pay for his family. I'm being asked to buy cars. I'm being asked to put him on my payroll in my business. And then a woman came to me, and a slightly different story, but same thing. It was a foreign national, and all of a sudden this person needs money for the family, wants his family to move into her house. Several of these this year. What do we look for? Can we even look for? Can we even, when we're needing a relationship, be clear enough to understand what somebody is literally presenting to us that has a ton of red flags attached to it? How do we do that?
That's a great question. And and really vivid stories too. I'm sure people who are listening to what you just said, just as I did, I can feel it. Like I can feel it myself. The confusion, if I was in the shoes of one of the people that you just described. What do we do? And I want to answer that question, because what do we do? What do we look out for? How can we protect ourselves And also at the same time acknowledging that what we're all looking for, we're all looking for connection. We're all looking for love. We hope it's going to be a safe love. We'll hope it's going to be an unconditional love. Unconditional. We hope it's going to be a love. And by love, there's a lot of synonyms. There's a lot of things. We're not talking about the Romeo and Juliet love. We're talking about real love, respect, reciprocal.
That's not real.
Yeah, well, also...
Really? Because I'm still looking for that.
Hey, you know what? I mean, there's a reason that we all think about it. Although it is interesting, Romeo and Juliet were 13 and 14 years old, which is a little bit strange.
Imagine?
Yes. And
little Richard would have had a field day.
Also, maybe Romeo and Juliet, maybe they just loved that their families hated each other. Who knows? It's not a great template. But
in those days, people actually got married extremely young because you died extremely young.
True. And it's so our understanding of love, and maybe this is for a different topic, or it is interesting just to reflect on what is love, real love versus fake love or fictional love or fantasy love. But just back to this topic here. We're all looking for connection. We're all looking for something. So that's the yearning. That's how did you get yourself into this? That kind of judging, that shame. How could you have been so stupid? What were you thinking? Okay, it's all because we're all looking and hoping and needing and longing for connection. Now, what do we do? Now, I'll share some helpful links with you that hopefully you can post along with this podcast episode on things to remember. From the Federal Trade Commission, which the organization that posted that statistics recently on the $304 million that was lost in 2020. And every year it's going up and up and up. Every year it's going up by, not double, but by, I think, 1.5 times every year. This stuff and next year we'll expect that it's going to be somewhere between 350 million and 400 million. It's going up every year. But the number one thing to do is to be aware of is, when people are asking for money right away, huge red flag. Now, it's a no-brainer to friends and family. Wait, Kevin, let me just ask you a question here. You met this woman. She's in Iceland. She's asking you for $750 for her visa. You've already sent her the $750 3 times already for 3 other visas. So she's asking you for another $750 for another visa application. And then she told you that she's going to need $10,000 for the flight. Can we talk about this a little bit? Because I'm a little concerned. So when money is involved, and again, I go back to just acknowledging that the world we're in right now is that we are meeting and pairing up and dating online. We're finding each other online. We are having Zoom dates. We're having text dates. We're corresponding. So again, it's not just COVID, but COVID is certainly pouring gasoline on the fire that, or maybe to put it a different way, there's people who are exploiting our human need to connect. And there's people all over the world who are sitting in internet cafes or in their home offices and casting a wide net and trying to use our longing for love and connection and trying to put together profiles of the perfect retired military man, the perfect woman, the perfect partner. And then once they get their hooks in us, and let me say us, because this is not a question of intelligence. This has nothing to do with IQ. This has nothing to do with income. My friend who died, brilliant, just brilliant. And the cases that I know of people that I work with as a therapist and also people that I know, brilliant people. And many of them will say, I knew, part of me, of course, knew. But I also, after the $20,000, I just thought, no, it can't be. It can't be. This has nothing to do with intelligence. And again, shame, like you said before, have you said the walls of shame?
The walls of embarrassment.
The walls of embarrassment, the walls of shame. Yeah. So, but when money is involved, and again, the links I share with you that are quite good from the Federal Trade Commission about what to look out for when we're asked for money, when we're asked for gifts, when we're asked not of our time and of our honesty, but when we're saying, hey, can you send me these sunglasses? Can you wire me this money? Can you pay for my application? There are flags. Many of them they're red. Sometimes they're kind of pink. Sometimes they are blood red. And it's good we talk about these.
On the other side of that is, would you, the person who's been exploited, ever ask for money of anybody else? I mean, for those people who have integrity, honesty, want to support themselves and be independent, it's very difficult to ask for money if we get into a legitimate jam for ourselves. That's a very difficult ask. And so, from my vantage point, when you've just met somebody and you only know them a few months, maybe up to a year, and they're asking for a lot, that's not normal. That's a problem.
That's right.
Why are they asking? What's the matter with their life? And why all of a sudden are you being asked to support their family? So, and I want to piggyback one thing. There are certain cultures in the world that are very family oriented.
Right.
And so you don't just marry the person, you marry the family. Understand that, and in a healthy situation, that's great. Because it's great to have a community of people that you've just married into. But if you cannot speak their language, first of all, you really don't know the nuances and the contexts in which they're talking to you. But number two, just to be asked, why? Why are they asking? Why do they think you would feel in any way responsible to support them, to support their family? You know, it's just an unusual situation to be in.
It's
and so just the ask itself.
Yes. When if I was to get a call, and I know many of us get these telemarketing calls, and if people just ask out of the blue, are you happy with your current mortgage? Are you happy with your insurance? Would you like to make a donation to? Many of us hear that and we think,
a donation to my mortgage. No,
yeah, I know.
Sorry about that. My mortgage could use some help.
So many of us, we get these calls or we get these asks and we hang up, or we don't take the calls, or we say, no, please take me off your list. In this case, it's not quite so removed, because again, we got that other factor, which is intimacy, love, connection, dreams of a future, less alone. And I hope this doesn't sound judgmental when I say that our judgment is clouded. It is, we are wearing different glasses with different lenses. And here's something else that's quite common in these cases of romance fraud and financial exploitation, whether someone loses $2,500 or whether people lose $250,000, is when the perpetrator has already made their way through all of the credit cards, all of the savings of that target, that victim. And at that point, speaking of family, at that point, it's, you said you've got a brother. So why don't you ask him to wire you some money to help me with my next medical bill? Because you know that I come from a big family and we value family here. So the least you could do, Shelley, the least you could do is ask your family. If the roles were reversed, I would do it for you. I would do it for you. And here's something else I just want to share. Maybe some listeners, I hope they haven't, but maybe people have experienced this too. Something happens in all confidence schemes. There's a moment that happens where the victim realizes, I mean, there's always a sense, we all have our discernment and our intuition, but there's a moment where we realize, wait a minute, we kind of wake up. And by explaining this phenomenon, let me just tell this very quick story. There was a case that I heard about. I was listening to NPR, I think, and it was about a scam for a wedding planner. And the wedding planner said that online, she will, if you give her $30,000, she will plan your entire wedding. She'll get you great rates for a destination hotel, wedding, venue, table settings, swans, all of it. So this was a case where someone did pay. They gave the $30,000. The wedding was 6 months out. Then all of a sudden, 4 months out, 3 months out, 2 months. And all of a sudden, they realized that they weren't getting the kind of things they were expecting. So they even called the hotel themselves. And they said, hey, we're really looking forward to coming. And they said, we don't have any reservation under your name. We don't know what you're talking about. So at this point, the victim, again, realizes it, kind of comes out of the fog. And they call the con artist, at that point, just the wedding planner. And they said, listen, something's going on here. We tell us the truth. What is going on? Because this doesn't add up. Because it doesn't add up. And this is what happens in cons. At that moment, the con artist doubles down. And at that point, they say something like this. And this is what was related in this story. The wedding planner said this to the soon-to-be bride. How dare you, after everything I've done for you, the nerve. I've been in this industry for decades. And after everything I've done, I could have been working with anyone. And you know what? I will wire you back your $30,000 today because I don't have time for this. I work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And to be treated with this much disrespect, I don't even have words for it. So consider this our last conversation. I will be sending your money back immediately. And just so you know, you have ruined what could have been the most magical way to start your marriage and your future family together. So consider this relationship over. And at that point, just like with all cons, the victim worries. Wait, maybe I got it wrong. Only a legitimate person would speak to me this way. Only a real wedding planner would talk to me in this fashion. And in this case, just like in all cons, the soon-to-be bride said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I just got nervous. It's my wedding. I want it to be perfect. It's okay. Just send me another $10,000. Okay? And then I will be able to get the reservation. And then we'll be back on track. And I forgive you. So cons work. And it works because it preys on our connection, our longing, our love, our hope for a brighter future. And unless we talk about these things and help people recognize it so that when the brother gets asked, can you give me $5,000 because I need to get this guy? He's in Saudi Arabia. He's in the military. He's a former oil worker. This is it. He's the one that we can actually pause and say, can we talk? And if you don't want to talk to me, can you talk to this expert? Because I'm really worried about you. So thank you for indulging that story because I think it really paints a picture of what it's like at times to be wrapped up with people who have no regard for our heart and they have no regard for our financial health. And this is deadly serious stuff. Deadly serious.
See, yes, it is deadly serious, as in the example of your friend who actually committed suicide because she was so embarrassed, shameful, overwhelmed with allowing herself to be duped. Yes. We find it hard. People who would never do this, we find it hard to believe there are other people who would do this. And it's just like politics. You pick a team that you want to be on. So that team is generally right. And the other team is generally bad. And neither team, the members on neither team can wrap their heads around, our political parents don't love us. And I don't care what team they're on. They really just love themselves.
Yes.
And you have no clue after you support them what they're doing. Very little do you know what they're doing. So it comes in the way of that. Or our doctors, we may not be served well with our doctor or our auto mechanic. I remember my dad would bring his car to the same auto mechanic and within days was back, and we would say, Daddy, you got to go somewhere else. These people are taking advantage of you. And then it happened to my mother after my dad died. The mechanics, this one place where she bought her cars, just took advantage of her because she would never do that to anybody, because my dad would never do that to anybody. It was very difficult for them to accept it was being done to them.
To them. Wow.
And so I think this happens, in this romance fraud situation. So I identified it in the area of immigration divorces, because that's all I've seen is immigration marriages going into immigration divorces. Other than that, Brian, if it were just between U.S. citizens, is there an equal amount of romance fraud to go around in the garden variety, just U.S. meeting people and wanting to have a relationship that means everything to us? Yes. Therefore, we're willing to pay everything to have that relationship that means everything.
Yes. No, that's a great question. And along with the statistics that you mentioned that were released, and we're going to see many more statistics now that this is being tracked more. Although the $304 million, just like the $202 million lost to romance fraud and financial exploitation in 2019. We are getting better information, like better data now. It's all self-reported though. So again, that wall of shame, that wall of embarrassment is quite high. So the numbers, whether it be 200 million lost in 2019, $300 million lost in 2020, these are only from self-reported losses. So how many people who have lost any sum and have had their heart broken and their financial heart, not their financial heart, but their finances broken and damaged, have thought to themselves, I'm taking this to the grave. So that caveat, just wanted to let everyone know that these numbers are, like suicide, underreported for sure. Because there's a lot of shame there. No, but also, we see that the statistics as far as who are targeted, I think I remember saying, I'll post this or I'll share it with you to post. In the Federal Trade Commission, in their studies, they saw that the fastest growing age group that are being targeted and exploited are, I think, 20 to 29-year-olds. So quite young. We see that between the ages of, I think, 40 to mid-60s is still the largest. And right now we're talking about in the United States. 40 to, I think, mid-60s is the group that has the largest number of incidents. And then the most money lost, the most actual dollars lost, is for 65 and up. That's the most actual money per case, per fraud case, is lost for 65 and up.
It makes sense because at that point, most people have acquired their wealth. Maybe they're thinking of retirement. And that makes sense. That makes sense. And the age group of 40 to 65 to be targeted as the largest also makes sense because you've kind of made it at 40-ish, but you're still climbing up and accruing more. Okay, so that all makes sense, Brian.
Yeah, and maybe this is my okay, I just came out of a long-term relationship. I'm finally separated, finally divorced. I'm trying again. I haven't given up on love. And who among us wants to give up on love? Some of us have been so beaten down and battered that we think, you know what? Unless my dream man, unless my dream woman comes along, I think I'm hanging it up. And then all of a sudden, I try Tinder. I try Hinge. I try JDate. I try, and there they are. There they are. My dream man, my dream woman. There she is. I can see her on my computer, and she talks to me, and she'll get on the phone with me and talk to me all night. All she asks is for $75 every 3 weeks for a calling card. That's not too bad. And then all of a sudden it's $400 for a visa application. And she missed her flight. That's what happened. She just missed her flight. She needs another $2,500 for her next flight. You know, she's got a mom who's sick, and sometimes she has to cancel the last minute. But she's the one. I tell you, she is the one. And again, we're not doing anything wrong. I really want to stress this, because the walls of shame and embarrassment, this loneliness of, I must be the dumbest, most pathetic person on earth to have lost $120,000 to what ended up being a young man in Nigeria who said that he was the woman of my dreams. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not a bad person. You're not broken. You are a human being. In fact, you are so human that your caring and your longing and your connection and your love brought you to this place. And you're not stupid. You're not a bad person. You're not alone. You're not alone. There are so many of us. Some of us, maybe we haven't been in this ourselves yet, but we know people. And so I'm just glad. And again, thank you for putting up a flare, so to speak, or having a beacon, like a lighthouse, and saying, this is happening. Let's acknowledge it's happening. Let's support each other. Let's find safe spaces where we can tell our stories, get the help that we deserve. Not that we need, but that we deserve. Because when we have our heart broken and when we have our financial welfare or our financial health damaged, we deserve an opportunity to recover and heal those wounds. And like I said, this is deadly serious. Deadly, deadly serious.
It doesn't just happen in immigration marriages. It actually really happens here in the United States. I have seen it happen, Brian, obviously I work in the field of divorce, so finances, money, the way we use money, the way we make money is the number one reason why people get divorced. You need money to live. And if both people aren't on the same level, so to speak, about their priority with money, saving, spending, all of that, eventually it's just too much for the marriage to survive. Within that context, you will have either the opposite of what is culturally normal. You'll have the wife in a heterosexual marriage. You'll have the wife making or inheriting or coming from money far more than the husband. That's problematic. Eventually, the male ego suffers in all of that because culturally we are set up for men make more money, although we know it's not right. We're set up for men make more money, women make less. And when you have the opposite, it is very difficult for a lot of men to accept that their wife comes from money, and it's very difficult for the wife to accept they came from money, and their level of expectation with their husband may be unnatural, may be such that the husband feels horrible, is ashamed, embarrassed, and can't deal. And then you may have a situation where the husband financially takes advantage of the woman. So you have that, or even you have young men, older women. Younger men like to be taken care of. Older women have the money. Okay, it's just money. He loves me. He's adorable. So why not use it and have fun until you find, hey, oh my God, how do you get the password to my bank account? Why isn't I thought I had X number of dollars there just last week. Where did it go? Oh, you know what? I forgot to tell you. I needed a quick it's in homegrown garden variety relationships too. And so I was dealing with therapists last year who were talking about financial infidelity.
Ooh.
And that was such a great term that I learned. And so with financial exploitation, you can have financial infidelity as the method of exploitation, right?
Wow, that's really, I love that term, and I want to learn more about that. These are tricky things, and that we all can. I think everyone can benefit from untangling some of these norms. These gender norms, these roles that were put into the what we've learned or what we didn't learn about money growing up. I heard a statistic from an expert in Florida who studies this kind of exploitation, romance, kind of love fraud. And she said that in her experience, half of therapists are almost entirely unaware of this phenomenon. So some people may go to a therapist and say, I was dating this guy. Yeah, he's 20 years younger than me, but there's these money things coming up right now, and I'm a little uncomfortable. And a therapist who doesn't understand financial infidelity or romance fraud and financial exploitation, or these intimate partner, some people have called it intimate partner terrorism, that there is this kind of exploitation. That's quite an intense way to say it, but in her experience, 50% of the therapists that she has worked with in the past had no idea what we are talking about today. So even a therapist might say, okay, there's other fish in the sea. And that doesn't address the hurt, the pain, the wounds, both emotional and financial. So I'm glad we're talking about this. I'm glad that there's plenty of others who are talking about it. I'm glad this is being tracked. I'm glad that there's ways to heal. There's ways to, and of course, all healing starts with acknowledging the wound. Right? Without that beginning, there can be no beginning. So honesty and getting together with people who understand. And thank goodness.
And then back to the therapist who may not be hip to financial infidelity and financial exploitation, therefore cannot give you the help that you need in, and I want to finish this discussion with this piece. How do you get out of the relationship?
Yeah.
Like if you're with somebody and there's no immigration issues, immigration has a whole piece to it that people who are in immigration marriages really need to understand from immigration attorneys. And I'll get to that in a second. But we don't have the immigration piece to worry about, but we are with somebody who's exploiting us financially and now isn't even providing the love, the nurturing, the companionship, the reasons why we, the exploited person, got into the relationship. What kind of advice can you give those who finally come to the realization, I think I need to get out of this relationship? What do they need to do to prepare themselves so they can safely do it? Because I bet some people might be fearful.
Well, yes. And maybe for a different episode, or maybe I can also provide some information that can speak to, understanding who are the types of people that perpetrate these crimes. And these are, let me throw out some terms that capture what these people are: psychopathic, narcissistic, antisocial, people who are incapable. And there's reasons why they weren't born that way, but we'll leave that to the side. People who are incapable of feeling empathy for others, remorse, people who are completely, it's all about me, like a child. And in many ways, it is that kind of, it's all about me. So it is important to be aware that these children have tantrums. Adult children, so to speak, are combustible, are also. So I just wanted to say, I'm glad you said that. How can we extricate ourselves from these relationships in a safe way, in a thoughtful way, and to get out? And number one, I would say, find the safe people in your life. It doesn't have to be a therapist, although the good thing about therapists is we're not just there to talk. A lot of people don't realize, like us therapists, we can have homework in between sessions too. Oh, you're in this relationship and you're not sure how to move all your furniture? Let me do some research for you. Turns out there's a company in Los Angeles that will move for free anyone who has found themselves in a abusive relationship, whether it be physical, emotional, financial. Wow. These are the kind of things that therapists and social workers like us, that this is part of our job, is we don't know all the answers, but we know where to find the answers. So number one, I would say, reach out to safe people. Ideally, try to find a mental health professional or someone who understands it. And like, as I said to you last week in the suicide prevention podcast, I'm glad to support people. And I may not be the perfect person to work with you on one-on-one in a group. Maybe you prefer to work with a female therapist. Great. But I am there to support and help people find the help they need. So if people want to reach out to me, they can do so, and I can help point people in the right direction. Because, as I said before, I don't know if I said this last time we spoke, but life often is so hard when we try to live it alone. We try to figure it out alone. And maybe life is a team sport. And some of us, we end up on dangerous teams that with people that don't care about us. So
teams that would be on the show Survivor.
So let me just leave my work cell like I did last time. People can reach out anytime if they want help getting the help that they feel like they need, or maybe an opportunity to talk through, am I in one of these romance, fraud, and financial exploitation situations? Absolutely. So, and like I said, if you can post that information,
I'll definitely do that. The reason why I wanted people to know that your brother was a private detective and you have some experience working in that area and also intelligence is with one of the calls I got this year, which romance, fraud, financial exploitation, everything that was being described to me over the phone. Judy, I need a divorce. I need a killer divorce attorney. Wish I could use you, but but wait a minute. Can you just tell me about your case a minute? Because that was so extreme. And as the case and the description of the other person was being given, I got frightened. Mm-hmm. You mentioned sociopathic. Yeah. You didn't mention borderline, but that can go in it. Narcissistic, people that cannot feel empathy, therefore can do anything to you as they're angry, acting out. You change your behavior, all of a sudden you're the enemy and you are to be gotten rid of somehow, some way, because they have to be preserved. I found myself saying something that I had never said before. And I said, it sounds like you're pretty convinced that you need to get a divorce. That's fine. Only you would know. But what you have just told me on the phone is so significant and so out of the norm. I think you need to hire a private detective. I think you need to look into this person's background. We were talking foreign national, so different country. And he found a detective that could do that.
Great.
And the story he called me back. He said he found a detective. He told the story to the detective like he told to me, and the detective said the exact same thing that I did. He said, first of all, you're not alone. This happens to more people than you realize. So he sounded like you. And then he said, I am so happy you're calling me because you need to know who you're dealing with when you're dealing with an extreme personality. You need to know who you're dealing with to know how to hire the right people.
Nice.
To do this with you and for you. You need to know how to protect yourself. In case something happens, and how are you going to get this person out of your house?
That's right. I love that story. It's important that we take care of ourselves. We get a good team. We get the right team. because some of us find ourselves on the wrong team. And maybe it does feel that way. I'm in this relationship. I'm on a really terrible team right now. And so others, whether it be private investigator, private detective, law enforcement, FBI investigates these cases, not only when it's overseas, but domestically. This is mental health professionals like myself who, by virtue of my background, yes, I get it from a lot of different perspectives. And also personally, I've been touched by this. So I care. And thank goodness that when we all find a therapist that cares, we don't pay a therapist to care. We pay them for their expertise and their wisdom. And okay, but if we can find a therapist that cares, that is very, very special. And somebody who is willing to talk us through moving out our furniture, talking through. He just texted me again. What do I do? And okay, I'm so glad you reached out. Let's focus on, yes, no contact. Great job. You haven't talked to him in 6 weeks. Great job. You have changed your phone number. It's being on a good team again.
They're living together. They're in the same house.
No, so. I know it's complicated. So yeah. But I love your story, and that we can find a new team that can help us get out of these situations. So again, this is happening. It's not something, even though the walls of shame are quite high, I think this conversation today has helped. Maybe it doesn't feel like a wall so much right now for people, but maybe there's someone listening and it feels more like a fence. And now they can see through it. And it's not this shame, this embarrassment, this scarlet letter. And you know what? There's life on the other side. There's people here to support you. And again, if I can be of support to anyone, please feel free to reach out. And I don't want to lose anyone else to this. I really don't.
Absolutely. And because I work on the legal side of relationships, I want to say to everybody, not only if you are in a relationship, do you really, with somebody who's taking advantage of you financially, not only do you need to really find out what's going on in that person's background when you're not with them. What is their history? Have they been arrested before? I mean, who in their right mind looks for an arrest record for somebody they're dating before they marry? I mean, nobody does this, right?
Right.
You don't know. I mean, people keep things buried. You don't know who people are, especially if you meet somebody in their late 30s and 40s even. So really get somebody who can give you the background on this person. I know this sounds like a TV movie, but it is not. Those movies, those TV shows are based on real life situations. So when you say, oh, Judy, please, this is just, you're being overly dramatic. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. You will wish that you were more dramatic about this later on if you are right that there is something wrong in your relationship. So get a professional, get a private detective, get somebody who can investigate and really look in the background of the person you're married to or who you have living with you. Number 2, you need to get an attorney.
Yes.
Who understands all of this.
Yes.
And who may have a team of resource people that they can bring on board for these specialized cases. And if you are married to a foreign national, you absolutely need to go to an immigration attorney who will then understand, what are your responsibilities? As a U.S. citizen, you actually have responsibilities to this foreign national. Okay, you say it's fraud. Let's bring a family law attorney and an immigration attorney together as part of your team. Then a therapist. So 3 people working together.
I love this.
Provide you with the right team of support so that you can navigate the waters properly. And I always say, divorce is an issue of compromise. Do what you have to do to get out of it. I mean, if you have to spend a little more money, maybe that's an option. Your attorney, of course, will guide you on this one. Or if you have really married somebody who has a nefarious background, your team will know how to deal with that as well and push you farther and farther away.
That's a great point. Yeah, I love how you put that out. The private investigations, legal, attorney, mental health, therapist, clinician, yes. And again, as I said before, if people need help finding a good private investigator or a firm, there's a lot of great organizations. Of course, finding legal assistance and also finding therapy. Like I said, I'm part of the team of people putting up their beacon and saying this is happening, and we don't need to suffer in silence. And so, again, thank you, Judith, for giving this topic the time that you and I both know it deserves.
And you don't need to commit suicide. That is not the way to extricate yourself, which
That's right.
easily can lead to that.
Absolutely.
Depending on how you react,
Absolutely. And I'll give you all kinds of good information to post, including my phone number, my contact information, the suicide crisis hotline information, which is another valuable resource, so that the walls of shame and the walls of embarrassment can come down, so that we can all of us, when we need it, find places where we can tell our stories. Because and this is the last thing I'll say, someone named Ann Voskamp, she said this quote about shame. Shame dies when stories are told in safe places. Shame dies when, isn't that great?
Yeah.
Shame dies.
Yeah.
Shame dies when stories are told in safe places. And so that we can tell our stories with one-on-one with someone we trust. We can tell our stories in groups. We can tell our stories in safe places. And that is how the walls of shame come tumbling down. And so again, Judith, thank you so much for giving this topic the space and the attention that we both know it really deserves.
Thank you, because I couldn't wait to have this conversation.
So glad.
Brian, people who will want to get in touch with you, phone number, email.
Yeah, sure. Let me give you my phone number. Yeah, and I'll give you on all the other stuff I can.
And it'll be in the show notes too.
Yeah. So it's 213-760-0621. That's 213-760-0621. And you can call or text. And again, Judith, thank you. You are wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. And thank you so much for giving us your time, not on one, but 2 episodes, Brian. That was incredible, with 2 very different topics that actually can meet in the middle in some measure. And of course, thank all of you for listening. This podcast is for you. And you know what? It's for me as much as for you. I learn as I go with all of our guests. And it is my pleasure to present vital information to bring you to an amicable divorce, or at least to get you extricated from something very difficult. You can reach me through my email, Judith@theamicableddivorceexpert.com, Judith@theamicableddivorceexpert.com. And as always, have an amicable day.
That's our show for today. Thank you for joining us. Be good to yourselves, be kind to your spouse, and cherish your children above all else.